Alright, so the patch notes for 10.7 just dropped, and these are to support the new Black Sun expansion. So if you guys don't know, there's been 27 new cards revealed over the last week, and that's going to be implemented tomorrow into the game. Now, I don't expect a huge change here because they probably want to see how the cards play out before they start doing a bunch of things to the existing cards. But we'll try and get through these quickly because there's a lot to cover overall within the game, and it could be overwhelming to receive too much information at once. But by the end of this, we should know what to expect for tomorrow. So we have the card drop, we have a few new keywords. Infused is going to be across all factions. Grace is going to be for Northern Realms, and Clash is going to be for Skelega. And these will probably be within some of the changes below. They're certainly on a lot of the new cards that are coming out, so look out for that. We have a new seasonal mode, Trial by Fire. This was talked about briefly in the dev stream during the Gwent Open yesterday. I'm excited to try this one out. I'm just concerned that it might get boring after a few games because you're using pre-built decks, and it really comes down to how many decks the devs built. It'll determine how much fun we have, kind of thing. So we'll look out for that. The evolving cards are now actually evolving. They used to say transform, and with this word change, they've also implemented an actual change, which makes the cards better. So any armor, statuses, ability infusions, or power changes will be retained. So really cool, because a lot of times you'd boost something in hand, you'd lose the boosts going into the next round. Now you're going to be able to keep the boosts, so it makes a big difference there. We have Alzer now getting the Knight tag. I'm not going to pull the card up. That's just a little simple change that now makes this card more flexible. It's a human, it's a mage, now it's also a knight. So cool, sure, right? We have Ogred Immortal. Start pulling them up here. So this card here, they're saying is now going to be 10 base power instead of 8. So it's a little bit of a buff. I don't think it's going to change the card much, but it's certainly going to help. I'm really happy that Ornate Sensor is getting a complete rework. So the provision cost is changed from 9 to 10, and the abilities changed to boost an allied unit by the amount of damage dealt to enemy units this turn, or damage an enemy unit by the amount of boost given to allied units this turn. It involves a little bit more setup and strategy opposed to what it is right now. If we look at it real quick, you could see how it's a problem. So if they have a 20 power unit and we have a 1 power unit, we could swap the power of the highest and lowest units on the battlefield. That situation, it would play for 38 points for 9 provision. Believe it or not, this card used to be 8 provisions. So removing it from the game, replacing its ability altogether is probably the smartest thing to do. So look out for that one there. Sienna Power changed from 3 to 5. This is not a big deal. However, it's kind of a big deal at the same time, right? We have 5 base power, which allows this card maybe to survive in cases where it wouldn't, because the order is so strong that opponents are going to want to remove this card when they see it. So it'll see more play, but it probably still won't see a lot of play. Good to see some changes to those cards. We have Vivian Provision changed from 10 to 9. Again, another one of those cards, right? So this one here boosts self by the provision cost of a card to the right. The highest provision unit in the game would be Fukusha, so the ceiling of this card would be 15 points for 9 provisions. It does go very tall, so it is more vulnerable. However, I could see this being played in some situations, maybe that are focusing more on neutral cards, or if they're using the cursed archetype, maybe that's the way to go about it. But again, just a point slam. Most decks are going to have a unit that's 13 provisions or 12 provisions, so most often you're probably going to see it played for 12 or 13 points. That's that. We have Auburn King replaced with Evolve. Necker Warrior. This one looks pretty cool because the powers changed from 4 to 7. And the abilities change to deploy if this card would not trigger any of your Thrive units, damage self by 3, and infuse self with Thrive. So what that means is now it's 4, has Thrive. Now it's going to be 7 starting tomorrow and trigger Thrive and stay at 7. But if it doesn't trigger Thrive, assuming we start off with this card or whatever the case, and we just play it on an empty board, it's going to damage itself by 3 and just become this. So it gives the card a bit more flexibility, doesn't really change the card a whole lot besides that, but still pretty cool. So with Skelega, we have Arnagod's tooltip adjusted to include the new Clash keyword. Nothing's really changed with the card. They've just made it more obvious what the card does within the description, so I like that about it. Gedinith is renamed to In Gedinith's Shadow. Again, no actual change to the card except for the name. We have Crack on Crate tooltip adjusted to include the new Clash keyword. This one's interesting because this card is already clashing as well with its passive ability. So they just made it a little bit more obvious in how to play the card. So whenever you play a pirate or ship next to Crack, damage it and the lowest power enemy by each other's powers. That's clash right there, right? So this is going to help support pirates, obviously given the pirate tag, given clash on the new units being pirates. I'm excited about that little bit of a change there. We have Herald, just replaced Transform with Evolve that we talked about earlier. And I have Melusine. So this change is pretty big. Replaced Veil with Deploy, gain Veil. Now, it doesn't seem like a lot, but if you look at the card here, the way that it's been played is that we play it in round 1, we resurrect it with Fukusha in round 2, and then we get to take it with Sigdrifa's Right in round 3. So we're getting 3 Melusines that the opponent can't do much about because it has a Veil. It plays for tons of points with all the rain that we spawn, and you can't lock it. So now, I believe during the dev stream yesterday, they were saying that the Fukusha will not allow this card to get Veil when we play it. They're saying the Doomed kicks in before the Veil. So now we have to find a way to purify the card round 2 to bring it back round 3 from my understanding. And it doesn't have Veil, so it's easier to answer. So this is a significant nerf to the card and the Self-Wound archetype. And if you guys know, I've really grinded with Self-Wound this season, so a little bit disappointed to hear, but you know, it's alright. We'll find something new to play. We have Northern Realms coming up here next, and Royal Inspiration has been reworked as a leader ability. Before, it was very underwhelming and not even played by anybody. I can't remember the last time I've seen it. Now it's looking very strong. So provision bonus changed from 16 to 15. Usually that indicates that the ability is going to be stronger. Now, order boost an allied unit by 5. If it triggered an allied unit's grace ability, refresh your order and reduce by 1. So you get 2 leader charges, 2 orders for your leader, and it's going to synergize with a few of the cards here below by the looks of it, and some of the ones that they just introduced to the game this week. So that's kind of scary, but it does push us in a direction that we can only really play this leader one way, and that's with grace. So again, not super healthy for the game, I don't think, but we'll see how it goes. Reynard Odo got a double buff here. So power changed from 6 to 7. Provision changed from 9 to 8. Ability changed to whenever you play a unit, boost it by 1. Grace 12, boost all allied units by 1. So if we look at the card here, it has formation. So at 7 power, played on back row, we'd be getting 8 power. The provision are now lower, right? 8. And then we have this order that stays, but the grace condition has been added to the card. So significant buff. This card's been around forever, and now it's probably going to be played much more. Okay. Vandegrift, just looking at this one now, I'm not super excited about it, but it is what it is. So provision cost changed from 8 to 9. That's a nerf. New ability, Grace 12, gain resilience. So they nerfed it. Now it's conditional, right? Before, you'd just be able to play it at 8 provisions. It would gain shield resilience, done. Okay. Now we have to set it up, which would be easy with this leader, but every other Northern Realms archetype, it's a little bit harder. So this card is not as universal. Okay. Vandegrift's Blade. Ability change to deploy damaged enemy unit by 5. Deathblow store destroyed unit's base power. The next time you play a unit, boost it by the stored amount, then destroy self. So let's say we chisel down something that's 10 base power, and we complete the kill with this 5. The next time we play a unit, we're going to be boosting that unit by the stored unit's power, which would be 10, right? We're getting the 10 boost off it. And it says the next time we play, not the same round. So I'm assuming that this would be carryover into the following round. This card's quite interesting, right? It's not being played at all right now, and maybe it'll be played now. If you think about it, it has a high point ceiling. It might be a little bit clunky, but I'm sure that you can find ways to pull it off, right? Northern Realms has Siege, so this could be a pretty cool tool for them, being able to chisel things down quite effectively. So I'm excited to be giving this one a try. That's probably where I'd use it. I might use it in a deck that has, let's say, Rodanian Archers or something like that as well. Revenants could be a good option. So cool stuff. We have Varaxis Prince. Again, transform, replace with evolve. We have Windhelm. This looks like a bit of a nerf to me. Grace 10, order, gain shield. Actually, it's not a nerf, it's just an additional part added to the card. So right now it starts with shield. Every ally turn end, boost self by 2 if it has a shield. It's going to be getting an order as well. If you've played this card, you know that people like to ping the shield off and turn the engine off. And it's only really good at that point if you have shield wall as a leader to reapply it, or a card that can add a shield. Now, if you can boost it high enough, you have an order to gain a shield. So that's good. I like that change. That's really cool, right? Again, Grace 10 makes it want to be played in this deck, but it doesn't mean you can't play it in other ones. So that's pretty sweet. The Centurion Knight has a new part of the ability. Grace 6, boost self by 2. This card here has a point ceiling, I believe right now it's 7, right? We have the 3 base power plus the 2 damage plus the 2 vitality. So if we just add Grace 6, boost self by 2, we're getting 9 potential points for 4 provision. It becomes a very good value bronze, especially for 4 provision. It's one of the highest in the game right now, right? If you see a bronze 4 provision card play for above 7 points, it's very good. So Centurion Knight looks like it's going to be a good addition to the Knight archetype. I have Mad Charge coming up here next. Ability change to boost an ally unit by 5 and give it 2 armor. If it's a Knight, also give it vitality 2. So what they've done is they've added an extra boost up front, but they've taken away from the vitality, right? I don't think that's going to make a huge difference. This is if you control a Knight. The other one's if it is a Knight. Again, not a big difference. More points up front, which is kind of nice, but that's about it. Rodanian Knight has a new part of the ability. Grace 8. Boost adjacent units by 1. This card, I don't know what to think of sometimes. So, Barricade, ranged at the end of your turn, boost self by 1. Exposed, move self to the melee row and damage the highest power enemy unit by 2. The problem with this card is that on the first turn end, it sits at 3 plus 2 is 5. So it sits in perfect 5-point removal. And the opponent will often take it, right? So it's hard to get value from this card. However, now they're saying, you know, Grace 8, boost adjacent units by 1. So that's pretty good, right? You can maybe hold the charge, or you can use a leader charge on that. Or not a leader, but a stratagem, and just start getting some real points quickly. So I think that's pretty sweet. So with Scoytel, we have Ethna Young Queen, replace transform with evolve. And with Percival, we have provision change from 7 to 6. I like this card a lot. I do find that it often sees removal, which makes it not get the full value that it's usually worth. This card generally has a point ceiling of around 14 points if you can proc it a few times, but it's really easy to remove in the first couple turns. So having it at 6 provisions allows us to justify playing it, even if it does get removed the first turn it's played, because it's not too bad at that point. And the Dryad Fledglings are getting a power change from 4 to 5. So if we look at them now, again, similar concept, right? Playing them from hand at 4 provisions feels kind of bad at 4 base power, because you put this down, it sees 4-point removal. You put down another one, it sees 4-point removal. You sort of wasted 2 turns on very slow tempo plays. The opponent gets really good trades on the removal, so it feels pretty bad. 5 points allows them to maybe live long enough to get a couple procs, and of course that 5 points translates to Water Broccolon spawns, so now we're getting the 10 points off the bat for the 12 provisions, which plays closer to its provisions than it did before, right? So this could see more play, especially with the new Harmony archetype cards that they've printed. Makes a big difference there. So I'm excited to see that and try it out. Farsier, this is funny. Provision changed from 5 to 6, so I guess devs decided that this card plays above the provisions, and I agree with them because this card boosts an unboosted unit in your hand by the number of boosted units in your hand. So playing into hand buff, this is huge. And if you're running 2 of them, you know, it becomes a bigger deal because now you have to find 2 provisions in the deck. So usually it means bringing like a 10 to an 8 or a gold to a bronze. So that could make a difference for the archetype, which already wasn't tier 1 or tier 2. However, you know, maybe they're sort of planning in around this expansion with the new cards and making sure nothing gets out of hand. So cool stuff there. I'm excited about the next one, Forest Whisperer. So power changed from 4 to 3. Which is, I guess, a little nerf there, but the provision cost changes from 5 to 4. So that's a buff. And I think it's worth it at that point here. We're not playing it for the base power. It's already low to begin with. We're playing it because it poisons. So deploy melee poison, right? Range, give an allied unit vitality for 3 turns. So what we can do here is if you play this in something like Guerrilla Tactics, you've got the poisons, and then you can also get that vitality going, right? So now the card plays really well for 4 provisions. It's actually kind of busted. You can make this work in a lot of decks, right? As long as you have a movement tech, you can get that second order. So a couple of these finish off poisons, you're getting removal, you're getting boosts. Like for 4 provisions, it's one of my favorite cards in the game right now, really. Moving on to Nilfgaard Glinis, provision changed from 7 to 6. So this with Assimilate is great. It's just like Percival, so it makes sense why they'd make this change. However, this is often not played in Assimilate because there's so many better options, right? So many more fast tempo plays, more control options. This is usually pretty greedy, so bringing it down makes a lot of sense. And then they just took Usurper and replaced Transform with Evolve, right? Syndicate, that's pretty much the only change we saw. There's a couple. So Jacques Miraculous Child replaced Transform with Evolve. Passiflora name changed to One Night at the Passiflora. That doesn't really change much about the card, but it does look like they did change Chapter 2 and 1. They swapped them. So when the card was first made, it was actually this way exactly with the prologue, chapter, and chapter. They recently made Gain 6, the first chapter, and then Spawn the second. So they're reverting it back to how it was. I kind of like it the way it was before this change because I would basically put it down, then proc it off an Adriano, and then I can worry about the coins at the end. But I guess they have a reason for this. It's not all bad. We'll see how it plays when the patch drops. Sir Skewer Tooth is another one of those cards that falls into the Glinis and Percival realm. You know what I mean? The whole boost 2 type thing. So intimidates whenever we play a crime card, boost self by 2. This card's not as greedy as the other 2, because if we take a tribute, then, you know, it gains immunity, so they can't remove it. However, the crime archetype itself is not very strong to begin with, so this is a better buff for it. And, you know, 6 provision feels pretty good, so I like it at that. I think this will see some really good value and definitely some play. When the patch drops, I like that it's saved too, because those go so tall. Next one here is a big one. So Fist Tech Trafficker now has a Blind Eyes tag. If you guys tried to play Passiflora or Blind Eyes archetype over the last couple months, you'll notice that a lot of the cards you want to include don't have Blind Eyes tags. It's sometimes hard to proc your scenario if you don't have them. Given the fact that now Traffickers have them, they're inexpensive cards to play that act as removal options that can proc our scenario. So that's huge. We're getting engines on the board from procking scenario while getting removal from what the opponent's doing. So I really like this change, and I think it's going to be huge for the faction. And it's not supporting some of the really broken off the books type decks that we already have. It's supporting things that maybe haven't seen as much play. So really exciting stuff there. Salamander Mage gets a nerf. This card is like anti-swarm written all over it. It's kind of too busted right now. So tribute cost changed from 4 to 5. I'm happy to see it. And it's this one here, right? Tribute 4, it'll be 5. It goes down to 4 if you're playing off the books, which is generally where you want to play it, but at least it's not going down to 3 as it is right now. So that's pretty much it, guys. These are the patch notes for 10.7. Let me know what you guys think below in the comments, and I'll be streaming tomorrow as soon as the patch drops, making a bunch of new decks and testing them out and all that type of stuff. So if you want to drop by and hang out then, hope to see you then. And that's pretty much it for now. Until then, have a good one, get some rest, eat some good food, and I'll see you for the patch.